Hello everyone and welcome back to FantasyFootballFix.com and to another episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm. My name's FPL Phillips and this is the series where every single game week of the season I'll be taking on the Algorithm team to see if I can beat it for points on each game week of the year. Now we didn't have an episode last week where I brought to you my wildcard video instead, so go and check that out if you're playing the chip this week. But this will be for those of you who are interested, on those who are looking like some great short-term assets, or if you're on a free hit or considering one for game week 31. But before we get into it, I know it was a while ago now, but let's have a little quick recap of how we got on in game week 30. And this is how the Algorithm got on in game week 30, and it wasn't too shabby at all. A very decent points total of 61, albeit in a blank game week where you would be expecting the free hit chips and those who were playing the chip to do reasonably better than people who did have people like Rafinha and other players who blanked, of course, unexpectedly or expectedly if they just didn't have any fixtures scheduled. The Algorithm team did very well. There were a few players really carrying the side, the likes of Saka, Son and Harry Kane. I'm looking at you, and then a few players who were a bit letdowns, such as Lacazette and Jimenez, most noticeably, didn't do very well indeed, did he, with that sending off. But otherwise, pretty good, solid showing from the Algorithm, and now there wasn't many changes I could make to this side. There are a lot of good players and good assets in the team already, but let's have a look at the few noticeable changes that I did make and see if they managed to actually outscore the Algorithm's total of 61 for game week 30. And overall, those changes that we made did turn out to be good ones. We, of course, brought in Johnny at the back for size, who I did back quite publicly, and actually did pay off, grabbing himself a goal for Wolves. Of course, we also changed Tielemans out for Maddison in midfield, which turned out to be another points-gaining move. And the final change that we made was to switch the captaincy across from Harvey Barnes, who scored 5 points, over to Harry Kane, who came through in that Spurs game, as a lot of the assets did. Son and Kane, who a lot of people had either one of or two of in that match, and grabbed a 13-point haul, bringing his captaincy total for my team against the Algorithm up to 26. So a very nice total point score of 83 for me in a blank game week on the free hit draft. Quite template, I know, but there wasn't many differentials that you could go for in this game week. I think this draft really couldn't have gone much better, to be honest. Perhaps Raul Jimenez could have done something differently, or maybe I could have changed him out, but there weren't any other strikers I was really considering too strongly. So let me know how you guys did in game week 30 down below in the comments. But let's make sure to get into now and have a look at what you've been waiting for, the Algorithm team reveal for game week 31. So then, here is the Algorithm team for game week 31, in a game week where a lot of us have been anticipating to get a return back to the Premier League. And in goal for this week, it is going to be none other than Nick Pope, which seems understandable given a double game week, albeit one game against Manchester City. But the second game for Burnley against Everton does look a nice fixture, especially for perspective of a clean sheet with how poor Everton have been. Really, it really is the battle of the stinkers with regards to Burnley and Everton, so perhaps don't take too many risks with getting in players like Nick Pope and other Burnley assets who you might be bringing in for one game week realistically, although Burnley of course do have more fixtures to be rescheduled than Everton in the long run. They should have 3 double game weeks before the end of the season. We know one of those will be in game week 33, one of course is this week in game week 31, and the other one may well end up being in game week 34, I believe, so that could be very nice to get quite a lot of fixtures for players over the coming game weeks. But I'd probably only go for Nick Pope if you're on a wild card. Making transfers for goalkeepers has never really been my thing, but albeit a very, very nice option if you're on a free hit, and I probably would go for Nick Pope between the stakes. In defence then, it's going to be Michael Keane, Robertson, Thiago Silva, and then Roberts of Burnley. So a double up on the Burnley defence, and Roberts, if you are going to go for a Burnley defender, probably would be my pick of the bunch. He looks very nice in terms of underlying data, and I think really I just like to go for those attacking fullback options really. Sometimes, you know, his data is a bit shunned by, you know, the likes of Ben Mee, or maybe even Tarkowski you could go for if you're looking for Thunder Bastard FC. But really, I think Roberts is a nice one to go for. A very cheap option as well. If you're on a tight budget and you can't afford the likes of Cancelo, James, maybe even Robertson, then going for Roberts at that low price he's at is not a really bad option at all. But I probably wouldn't be doubling up on the Burnley assets in defence, and therefore I'd probably, if on a wild card, just go with Nick Pope. Michael Keane's another really strange one. The Everton defence has never seemed to really show any form of solidity in recent game weeks, but Michael Keane's always got that chance of goals from a set piece, or you never know, a goal into his own net isn't accustomed from him. But yeah, Michael Keane's probably one I would be avoiding, but equally so gets into this game week algorithm team with a double game week. So yeah, despite it being, not too easy fixtures against West Ham, but better fixtures, you'd have to say, than Burnley have with a West Ham game as opposed to a Manchester City game. Then Robertson comes in, and it really is a dilemma between going with him and Trent Alexander-Arnold this week, really due to the fact that we've had conflicting news on whether Trent Alexander-Arnold is actually going to be fit or not for game week 31. James Pearce came out, who's a very well-respected journalist for Liverpool, and said that Trent Alexander-Arnold has no chance really of playing against Watford, and that his estimated return date would be for the Manchester City game in game week 32. Now, albeit that would mean no game for him against Watford, of course, and then no double game week in game week 33, with an early return if it would be against Manchester City, which isn't a very nice game at all. And of course, a lot of people were holding on to Trent for that very nice game against Watford, but if he's not going to be playing in it, then it's going to be hard to not ship him out, really. And then Robertson provides a very nice switch across if Trent Alexander-Arnold is out. However, there's been news this morning from This is Anfield, I think was the source, who's saying that actually Trent Alexander-Arnold is back in full training, and whether we'll get some pictures of that and some evidence which will be provided, which will confirm that news, then it could be actually a case of, that Liverpool were rather playing the system, as I alluded to in the wildcard video, and actually Trent Alexander-Arnold is back, is fit, and could well play against Watford, in which case I would definitely not be transferring him out. But if he is confirmed ruled out, I do like the switches across to James, Cancelo, and of course Robertson. So perhaps if you're on a free hit, best not to take the risk of Trent, and maybe go with Robertson, who of course has been in fine form himself, and go with the Scotsman on the left as opposed to the Liverpool right back. And then finally in defence, we've got Thiago Silva. Well, the Chelsea assets, of course, like I mentioned, Reece James, who of course is a very, very appealing option if he's back and fit, which he has been pictured in training the last couple of days. And so I'd probably be going with him over Thiago Silva, but equally not a too bad of an option if you're looking to pick a Blues defender. Then in the midfield, we're looking at a midfield 5 this week with 2 double-ups mixed in there, with Mane and Salah, who of course play against Watford, and then 2 Everton midfielders, which really does surprise me. Going with the 2 Liverpool midfielders, I think, is a much more reasonable proposal, of course. You are spending a lot of the funds there, which means that maybe you've been forced to go for these Everton assets, the algorithm, as well as Aaron Lennon, who, again, is really quite a strange pick. I think that Damari Gray earlier in the season would have been a much more decent proposal. However, I think that really going with Gray and Decore this week, despite having a double game week, probably isn't the move. I know that we sometimes get double game week bias ourselves as individuals, but it's not as likely to see it in a fully formed algorithm, perhaps, or maybe just hasn't been taking into account how poorly Everton have been playing recently. But Gray and Decore, of course, do have some decent statistics from earlier on in the year and in previous seasons as well, so maybe it is a bit skewed there. I probably won't be going for those 2 myself. And then Aaron Lennon, of course, again, one that the algorithm seems to like quite a lot, but is a hard avoid from me. And then up front, we're looking at a Harold Kane in this side. Up front against Newcastle, a no-brainer really to have him in your free hit side, and equally in your own individual side, if you can get a route to him this week without having to, sacrifice any other big assets. He looks a very viable captaincy candidate for those who aren't going with Mohamed Salah, but the algorithm captaincy will, of course, be on the Egyptian king, returning back from international duty where he had a bit of a rough time. Maybe he'll be looking to get back on track and put his ways right again with a big haul and return against Watford. The vice captaincy on Nick Pope on standby if necessary, but the algorithm overall scoring a predicted points total of 81 for game week 31, which sounds a pretty nice total. A pretty nice total indeed. I'd be very happy with that in my own personal team, but it looks rather decent. Of course, the double game week's not really all that in my opinion, but now I'm going to reveal to you my team that I've put together to take on the algorithm for game week 31. And the points total for my team when I fed it into the Fantasy Football Fix Assistant Manager tool has come out at 76. And as you can see this week, there are quite a lot of changes to the side. I've stuck with a few core players such as Mane, Salah, Robertson, Harry Kane, and Nick Pope in goal I think is a rather obvious selection. And I've also kept Roberts in the back just to go with on a free hit. I like to take a little punt here and there, and going with the double Burnley defence is something I'm just doing to capitalise on that. There are other options I think are good, but I was also also limited a little bit by budget, having gone with quite a lot of big hitters throughout the team, namely the likes of Cancelo and Reece James, who I've brought in, alongside Robertson, who of course has remained in the back line. And I think these are my three favourite Trent Alexander-Arnold replacements, albeit pretty obvious ones, if in fact Trent is 100% ruled out, which, as I mentioned, I would hold on to him if he is not. I'll stick with Reece James, who, as I mentioned, has been back in full training. Cancelo looks fantastic and a great option to bring in with Manchester City's fixtures throughout the rest of the season, looking stupendous. And then in midfield, I've gone with Bukayo Saka and then Gordon, who is my favourite Everton midfielder to go for, no matter what price, really. I prefer him over Doucouré and I prefer him over Demarai Gray. So if you're looking to bring in a double game weeker in midfield and just have maybe even a fifth midfielder who you can start this week and sit on the bench in future game weeks if you've already played your bench boost, that looks like quite an appealing option indeed. I've also brought in Weghorst up front, who is my much preferred Burnley attacking asset as opposed to someone like an Aaron Lennon. So I've gone with him and switched formation to a 4-4-2, and that has earned me 76 predicted points, which I don't think is too bad. I'm normally a little bit further off the algorithm's totals, to be honest, but 5 points behind is not too bad at all. The armband has for sure remained on Mohamed Salah, who has a predicted points total this week of 9.2 from the Fantasy Football Fix predicted points tool, which is way above anyone else who is in second. And second is, in fact, Nick Pope, which is understandable given that he is the vice captain in the algorithm side. But yeah, that is what my team is looking like. As always, make sure to let me know down below in the comments, who do you think is going to come out on top in this game week of the season? Was it going to be the algorithm, or is it going to be Team Eddie that scores the most points? Do feel free to give your predictions down below. I'm feeling pretty confident about this week. Let me know how you're feeling about your own personal teams as well. Has this video helped make your mind up on any transfers you may have blooming or any decisions you need to make with regards to your own teams? But that is going to wrap up another episode of Eddie versus the Algorithm. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do feel free to leave a thumbs up if you have enjoyed, and make sure to subscribe if you're new around here to get all the best content from fantasyfootballfix.com. All the tools that I've used in this video have the links down in the description, and I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.